So I'm inserting this in to the video at the part where I do the tree, just to show you how it's done. I'm just using a piece of paper where I was practicing sun and water reflections. So it's kind of irrelevant to the painting, but I will show you how I do the tree. The first thing that I'm doing is I'm just mixing up all my paint colors. So I have Prussian, I have burnt sienna, imperial purple. I have all three of them combined into a dark, which I may or may not use. This is where I'm going to mix my green, which will probably be Prussian and the Hansa. But I've also got some Hansa and some Gamboge separately, and a lighter version of Hansa. In my case, my background isn't pure blue. Actually, maybe I'll turn this around because this side of it is blue, and that would be more relevant to what you're doing. And we're going to paint the tree using a technique that I use, where I use a spray bottle with an adjustable nozzle. And this is very important to have the adjustable nozzle. The benefit of these nozzles is spray according to your needs. So I'm just looking for a dark piece of paper here. One moment. I did not find a dark piece of paper, but I'm going to show you on my tray, my easel tray, because this has a dark background. That's a good way to show you. So when I spray, you'll see that there's little dots that come out there. I don't know if you can see that, but they're actually kind of big. It's not a full spray where it's going to wet the whole page. See the collection of dots that are there? That is what you want. So you adjust this nozzle until you get to the point where you have a collection of dots. There it was too much of a stream. So you want to see dots kind of spread out, or droplets, water droplets spread out like that. So that's what we're going to try to achieve. The first thing we'll do, though, is we're going to put the base of the tree in, which is very dark, and that's why we mixed up the very dark color. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a few brushes. I will use probably this Escoda Perla, and I have a dagger brush somewhere here. There it is. And I'm going to use that as we get further out. Any fine point brush, even this Escoda, does the job quite nicely. So those are the two brushes we'll probably use for this exercise. And what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to wet the bottom where the tree hits the rock and the beach, so that this part here doesn't create a hard surface. You can tilt your paper slightly. For now, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And the first step is to apply that dark paint. And let me just make sure I get my water back in here. So I want to have some darkness at the base where the tree hits the sand. And that's where the shadow is as well. So that's what we're putting in here, is just that dark base. And then gradually it starts to get some leaves in there. So my mixture of the Prussian with the Hansa, I can drop in there. I can drop in a bit of imperial purple because I want it to be dark. And just make sure this is happening at the bottom, that you've got a very soft bottom to this, and when this is done, it's going to merge into the beach at the end. So that's just what you would do, is kind of soften this out as you go. And when we get to the beach, we can do that part. And it looks really nice right now. This painting is probably as good as it is there. And then what happens is you just start getting lighter and lighter and start identifying these little leaves that come out. So only the edge, and then you can leave a few gaps here and there where maybe the sunlight is peeking through. And here's when we start using the spray bottle. So I get my spray bottle out, and I don't necessarily want it all wet here, but I do want it wet out there. I'm aiming my spray bottle down and putting those droplets on. And then I'm going to switch brushes to this dagger brush, and I'm just going to continue maybe with a bit darker paint initially. And what happens is it spreads out into those droplets and creates a very beautiful effect. So it kind of starts painting itself as we go up. Mix up a bit more Prussian and green mix. And then it's actually quite dark here, so I can also add some purple, imperial purple into that. Hopefully you're seeing this well. And maybe I'll turn on my light because sometimes it helps to have it a bit brighter. So this part here isn't as wet at the back. And the other thing is to look at these shapes and just make sure they're shapes that you want. If, you know, there's squares and things like that, just, you know, go into the shapes and kind of dab them out. Make sure your paper's still wet as you progress out. And now I'm going into these wet areas. If your background is blue, you can add just straight yellow, and of course it's gonna still have a green tinge to it. The leaves higher up might have a lighter color, and the leaves underneath are darker. And just keep throwing color in there. If it looks too high chroma, in other words, it's, you know, there's just too much saturation there, you can add some imperial purple. It'll help dye some of that down or subdue it a bit. Okay. And then just look at the shape that you're using here. So if we go out here, I'm going to make another kind of circle-y shape. If it's not wet here, I can detect right away because nothing will be bleeding out. So you can always just give it one more spritz, cover the area you don't want to have any spritz, and keep going from here. Because I happen to have a sun in this picture, I might just do a couple of yellow ones here to say they're capturing the sun, but you don't have to do that in yours. And I'm just going along. I'm alternating between those different colors. I'm going back to some imperial purple, throwing that in. Okay, and maybe I want to go right up to the top here with my green, because it's, you either kind of blur out the corner, or you, it's probably not a good idea to put nothing in a corner, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Okay. And then I'm just making sure there's a variety of color even in the dark part, so that's why I'm going back into here. Okay, and then maybe we have some of this extending out further here, dropping down. In our original picture, this actually extends really far out, so we can do that. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, make it a bit yellower towards the sun. Okay, and then I had a big hole there, so I just went in with some Prussian, and now I'm going to dye that down with some imperial purple. So there's always light and dark points. So let's say that's that's our tree. We might put some down here in the shade as well. Okay. Just making this darker here because there was a line across it. So that's how we do our tree. And then you can do the trunks and branches associated with that. I would say maybe start with burnt sienna and then, oops, that's quite pronounced there. I'm a little bit darker than that, but let's, and I'm also scraping some of this out. Is this border here? And it's important to have clean water when you do this, because otherwise you're putting more color on when you want to take more color off. But that's a bit better. It shows a little bit of the direction that we wanted. And then the other thing we can do is we can use this part here to create the area where a wave rolls over. I probably have a picture of that I can show you. Okay, so I'm just going a bit darker here, adding some neutral tint. See how that ends up drying. It's hard to tell right away. But I think that might do the trick. Okay, so the only other thing before we call this one a day is to just look at the shadows under here now that it's dried. Okay, and I can actually extend them down or like this in between those lines that we drew. I think these are more hard shadows, but I think they might read better than what we were seeing earlier. I think that helps a little bit. And this one needs more of a straight line on there. It doesn't have to go completely around this. Oh, and of course, we talked about the roll of the wave, and I never actually found that picture for you, did I? So here's the roll of the wave, and what I'm talking about is this small portion on the back that shows the other side of the wave. So we're just going to add a little bit of that into our picture. See what that ends up looking like. I'm taking my Prussian and the green that I mixed earlier, and I'm just going to put that in a few spots like so. So it looks like the wave is rolling over. Okay, and then on the other side of that, I just kind of soften that out. Not too much water there. Whoa. Okay. Way too much water. Where's my cloth? Okay, I get that all out. So that's the back side of the wave. And then the wave also has an underside. So if we say that the wave goes this way, can put that. Into the distance. And this part here is crashing down, crashing down. This part here is kind of the underside. And then we take a tiny bit of our cobalt blue or whatever we used here, and we apply that. Okay. And then the same thing will happen over here. We need a tiny bit of cobalt blue. Might be a good idea to wet it first. So let's do that. Get center over here. But then it starts crashing down over here. That makes sense. Not sure if it does, but. And then this part here, it's a little bit darker as it goes out into that part. This is crashing down. This part is not crashing down. It's the crashing starts there. So let's give it a bit of a splash and see if that saves it. Okay, so the last thing was really to get this part here darker. And what we'll have to do first is wet that area down. Where I want it really dark, I'm not going to wet down so much because I want to get that dark paint right into that. And this is my mixture I've been using all along with the Prussian, burnt sienna, sorry, stop the video there for a second. So this, gradually blending in is a tough one. You have to keep going back and softening the edges, making sure it's blending into the shadows okay. But I think we're starting to get it dark enough in that area. Should look almost like a division there. And I might extend some of the shadow over to these rocks because it's not apparent that they are in the shadow there. Lots of fiddling, which I don't normally encourage, but seems to be the trend with this one. Okay, and then this is what we have so far, and I think there's some issues. Number one, this rock is way too dark, so we want to make sure that we blend that in more with this whole area here. So I think we'll try that. I'm not really that pleased with this because it doesn't look like it's parallel to the sand. And if you look at the picture, the sand, it really has a slope going this way, which we didn't seem to achieve at all. But those are some of the considerations. So in order to fix the back rock, the first thing that we should probably do there is just take some of that paint out so it doesn't look so dark. So I'm just going to wet the whole thing. I'm going to run some of this into here. Okay. And it seems to be taking it out already quite a bit. I run that over here. Have to be careful on the edges here. I could kind of lose this whole edge here if I wanted to. I'm dabbing off my brush as well in order to get some of that paint out. It's a thirsty brush. Okay, so that helped a bit. It's a bit dark at the top. So I have to be very careful here because I don't really want to extend that edge. Okay. And then the same here. So quite a lot of paint is coming out. I might actually have to add a little bit more in, but I just want to get it to the stage where it's not so pronounced. And that would be true of this rock here. It always helps to have some variation in your rocks. So, texture, etc., which we didn't have. It helps define the shape of the rock. Just kind of randomly do that. You could even drop color in, but at this stage, I'm trying to get more color out than in. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Now the ones in front don't have enough of this dark color. So that's the other thing I would like to do. What I'm going to do for them is I'm just going to wet them a bit so that whatever color I put on can run into them. So I've used the same mixture I used on these rocks, but adding it to these ones. Okay. It really just needs a few spots like that defined. And that should help out quite a bit. Okay, and soften this out. So they look a little bit more cohesive with the other rocks. These ones, although they're in a different spot entirely. And then they do kind of merge into the sand, which we didn't achieve that either. But the only other way of achieving that is to put a whole layer over top. And then the other thing we talked about was making this more parallel. Now I could do that by wiping out. So let's try wiping out first. And then if that doesn't work, we can look at another strategy. So here I want it to look like the waves or the wash that's coming up onto the sand has a direction to it. So I'm just scraping this out. I'm first going to test this on a scrap to see how much splash I'm getting out. And I'm getting a fair bit, but I really want to direct this. I don't want it to be up here. Need a smaller piece of paper. Okay, this might do the trick, we'll see. So I'm gonna go like that, and then I'm gonna go like that. And what I'm trying to do is just get a small bit of splash coming out there, hitting the rocks. Great, but not too bad. The other thing you can do is use a brush to apply it. Well, I used a brush here. Toothbrush. And just decide where you want it. Kind of put that in. So it's kind of dripping down here. Even tapping it is not a bad idea. Okay. And then here we wanted some. Okay. And just here, there's little pools. Of white in these areas. Okay. This I'm unsure about. I was trying to do the roll of the wave there, but that's not really meeting our objective. Oh, way too much. But it will have to do, I think. You know, sometimes you get to the point where you're just, not much is working here, and maybe it's time to give up. I'm going to extend some of these things. I'm really risking overworking at this point. So I'm going to let that dry. And then if we think we should come back and do some more to it, we will do that.